Good morning, friends. We are starting a new subject, although every subject kind of runs into another.
Right.
We're naming this one Facts About God or Ideas About God,
Okay.
something of that sort. Well, this is a huge subject. It's beyond what we can discuss. But we'll start with where we usually start, and that's in the beginning. We know that in the beginning there was what we call nothing.
Mhm.
But nothing is not a good description
No.
because nothing is a negative
Yeah.
and God is only positive.
Right.
He is. That's a positive. And He is spirit. That speaks about some kind of strength, some kind of ability to move, to do things. So I reject the idea that God made everything out of nothing.
Okay.
Okay? Because there was no nothing.
Okay. Yeah,
It was all something. Something beyond what we can describe. So we're not going to get into that. It's not a
so
big, good idea.
It kind of emanated from himself.
Yes, he had, obviously, he had plans to be creative. And he had to know how to make created things, which could have always been a part of him, but he had a bigger plan even than that.
We're told God is light, and that's energy.
Well, we'll deal with that. Light emanates from him.
Yeah.
But he wanted someone other than him to talk to. He didn't need it, but he wanted it. Let's put it that way. So there's a long list of things that must be done to come to the point where somebody is other than himself.
Yeah.
So it says...
And he's not a man sitting in heaven with a beard trying to decide what to do.
No. We have physical things. We are so physically oriented that our ideas about God usually evolve into physical things. Mm-hmm. But just remember that all physical things are part of him, and this is what brings the confusion.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, before anything was made, it says, in the beginning, he began to create heaven and earth. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that is on the list is heavens. And so we have people with their theories about the Big Bang and all this sort of thing. I don't even know whether to go there, but if you can imagine God saying, well, if I'm going to have something that's other than me, I had to create a space or a place within me that has less of me in it. Because that's the only way he's going to get something other than himself, is to withdraw himself from an area in us to the point where it's very little of what exists of himself. And we call that a space, or makom in Hebrew means a place. Mm-hmm. So God made a place.
It's not what some people teach, that God created the earth and he went off and left it to its own.
No, I don't think so, but he could have. And it would have still been him.
Yeah, okay.
So, some of the ideas we get almost could be incorporated, but it's just another way of maybe looking at the ideas about God. But once he had this place, then he could speak things into it. And this is where your Big Bang comes in. His speaking was, if we could have heard it, would have been noisy, great, incomprehensible. speaking words that had all the built-in things that would set them into place.
Yeah. Well, people were frightened of Mount Sinai because of
Oh, yeah,
his
we're
voice.
going to get to that later. Now, we know that the heavens were created, so this would include spiritual beings. And then heavens would include galaxies and
the whole universe. I mean,
The whole-
universes. I mean,
all the universes, and maybe that kind of creation is going on and on, because in Hebrew, did you notice in this Hebrew translation, it said God began to create? Because the verbs in Hebrew, they don't have we call punctiliar, something stops.
Stops. Yeah.
They don't have it. They don't conjugate the same way we do. They don't carry the same idea. It's always moving action
Wow.
that started at some point and is still going on. So when we came to the seventh day and said God rested, that means he quit letting, he took off from creating for a little bit. And it was given to us for a sign. So anyway, so the first thing that appears is light. Light is the first thing that comes from God, but it is neither matter nor energy. It's both.
Okay.
And light has waves that come down and slows down until it becomes, first it becomes waves, and then the waves slow down and that becomes matter or material things. So it's a process. And he got the process with all this matter in the universe. He may have had angels doing stuff by this point, we don't know. But the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep, God created something called darkness, which is a negative. So we see
Well,
in
darkness is the absence of light.
Right. So that's another reflection of how he started the place. He withdrew himself enough to create darkness. Why did he create darkness as opposed to light?
So we can sleep.
So he could have someone that was opposed to him, other than him.
Okay.
So this world that he created is a dual system. And many people are fighting against this duality that we have in the earth. They want everything to be alike. They want everything to be equal in content, equal in superiority, equal everything. But that's the system that exists with God outside of the place. While we're on earth, we have a dual system. So we had darkness, and God was his first creative act that he records. God said, let there be light. So he created a system where you have darkness and you have light. And all through the Genesis first chapter, the whole point is God is making divisions. He's separating this thing from that thing. He separates the waters from the earth. He separates the waters from the waters. There's waters up above, there's waters down below. And he separates day and night. He makes plants. He makes animals. Some animals eat at night and hunt, and some animals don't. They do it during the daytime. He made a division between things. And then he makes a division between man and all other living created things, because his purpose is to have someone that reflects his ideas, his ways to govern this dual system that we call our world. So this is something about God that we are looking at today. But the tendency for man, because he didn't follow God's way, which we don't really quite can put together now because we're on this side of things.
And we're finite too.
Yeah, we injected something that's called missing the mark. That's the idea behind the word sin, is we missed the mark.
Right.
So now we're trying to find, how do we operate in a system where we've missed the mark, and we're trying to find the mark, and we're trying to find how we can get back on track so that we don't miss the mark. And the mark is to walk in the ways of God. So we have to learn what God's ways are. That's what brings us to the scripture, because he knew that we needed a guideline.
And we wouldn't know God without the revelation that he gave.
That's right, because the what he says it tells us more about him. And he has a way that he wants us to think about him in regard to all the created stuff that's around us. And we are made...
Everything is created reflects him.
Right. It all reflects him. And this is where, at some point in history, they departed from this idea about a God that created everything to, this is as much God as this thing over here. Everything was God.
Yeah.
And I will briefly just talk about that a little bit, and then we'll close for today, and we'll get into some of the aspects about him that we can go to scripture exactly and read what he says about himself. But in this day when thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people have had these near-death experiences, they call them, they go beyond this veil of dualism that we are in, and they become very much aware of God with the attributes that God presented to himself to Moses. We'll get to that one.
Okay.
So many of them say, well, oh man, I felt like I was God, because I could just sort of know everything, and everything that was and was going to be was all one no. I know, and so they're experiencing the eternalness of God.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to separate themselves from who he is. Now, these NDEs, you don't hear of any of them getting past the door that takes them away finally. So we can't really depend on that experience to tell us everything.
Right.
But the connection with God is so strong that it's easy to forget that I'm not God. Because all of us are a part of him.
Yeah.
So this is why he has to explain to us through the Tanakh and Torah that he gave us that we are not to call this thing God or that thing God. Whenever you have a physical manifestation, you think, oh, that must be God. Well, of course, it's a part of him. It's glorifying him, but it's not him, because you can't put him in a box.
That could lead to idolatry as well.
Well, that's what it does lead to idolatry, and that was mankind's biggest problem with this dual system.
Yeah.
And actually, even if you're in the single, not a dual system, and you feel so much a part of God that you feel like you're God, well, that's also a stumbling.
Mhm.
That could be a stumbling. So beyond what the NDEs experience, there must be some kind of conclusion that man must come to. I will never be God.
Yeah.
Because he started out with the purpose of making someone other than himself. And they do report at the same time that they can ask God questions, which tells us they didn't really know everything.
Yeah.
Because they wanted an answer to this or that thing that they had in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to learn these things about God so that we have in mind who we are relating to. And we'll close it with that today. This is such a big subject, but I feel so very inadequate about talking about it. But yet we all have ideas and thoughts, and we really try many times to get to things.
And everybody thinks about this and asks questions about it.
Yeah, at some point in their life they do, yes. So we'll visit you on this subject next week. Have a good day and a good week.